December 22nd, 1944, 14:47 hours. In a command post at La Glaise, SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Gietrich stood over a map and smiled. His 6th SS Panzer Army had driven 60 kilometers deep into American lines. Reports told of panic, retreat, entire U.S. divisions collapsing in confusion. The Americans are not soldiers. They are merchants, playing at war. When it comes to real battle, they run. 800 kilometers to the south, in Nancy, France, General George S. Patton stared at the same map. But his face showed no smugness, only cold fury. His Third Army was about to attempt the most astonishing maneuver of the war. In 48 hours, Patton said, we will pivot the entire army 90 degrees and strike a blow the Germans will never forget. 4 days later, Dietrich was no longer smiling. His invincible SS army was trapped, and the men he mocked were writing a new chapter of Blitzkrieg. This is the story of how mockery became nightmare, and how Hitler's last gamble turned into Patton's greatest triumph. The last throw of the dice. December 16, 1944, 05:30 a.m. The silence of the Ardennes was shattered by the thunder of 1,000 guns. Operation Wacht am Rhein, Hitler's last desperate attempt to change the course of the war, had begun. 200,000 German soldiers, 600 tanks, 1,900 guns, all crashing down on an 80-kilometer front held by just 4 American divisions. It was the largest German offensive on the Western Front since 1940. The Führer had chosen his ground well, the Ardennes, where in 1940 his panzers had smashed through to the Channel. Dense forests, narrow roads, perfect terrain for surprise. And the Americans? They believed it was a quiet sector. The 106th Infantry had been there only 2 weeks. The 28th Division was recovering from brutal fighting in the Hurtgen Forest. When the attack came, they never saw it coming. By noon, units were collapsing. Entire battalions surrendered. By nightfall, the Germans had advanced 20 kilometers. In Berlin, the mood was euphoric. Goebbels prepared a proclamation, the birth of a second Dunkirk. But in Versailles, at Allied headquarters, Eisenhower saw the truth. This wasn't a feint. It was a gamble, one that could prolong the war or end it forever. He picked up the phone. Get me Patton.
Hitler's plan. The plan for Wacht am Rhein had been born months earlier, in desperation. September 1944. Hitler, trapped between the Red Army in the east and the Allies in the west, summoned General Alfred Jodl. His idea stunned even hardened staff officers. A massive strike through the Ardennes, cross the Meuse River, capture Antwerp, split the Allied armies in 2. If we take Antwerp, Hitler said, tracing a finger across the map, the British and Americans will be divided. They'll beg for peace. Then we can turn everything against the Bolsheviks. On paper, grand. In reality, fantasy. Fuel reserves were nearly gone. Each panzer division could fight for only 150 kilometers. The Luftwaffe could muster just 800 planes against 4,000 Allied. And the Americans were no longer the green troops of 1943. Field Marshal Rundstedt called it a grand illusion. Field Marshal Model begged to scale it down, but Hitler refused. This operation is our last chance, he said. Either we break the Allies now, or we lose the war. The storm breaks. The attack began with 1,900 German guns firing in unison. The ground shook. Forests splintered. Private James McNamara of the 99th Division remembered, quote, "The earth jumped under our feet. Trees fell like matchsticks. It felt like the world was ending. Then came the tanks. SS Panzer divisions, Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler in the north, Hitlerjugend in the center. By December 19th, 7,000 Americans surrendered, the largest U.S. capitulation in Europe. But not everyone broke. In the crossroads town of Bastogne, the 106th Airborne dug in. When German envoys demanded surrender, Acting Commander Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe sent a one-word reply: nuts.
Patton's gamble. December 19th, 10:30 a.m. The phone rang at 3rd Army headquarters in Nancy. Eisenhower's voice. "George, the situation in the Ardennes is critical. How fast can you move north?" Patton didn't hesitate. 48 hours. Eisenhower paused. The 3rd Army faced east. Patton would have to pivot his entire force, 133,000 men, 800 tanks, 500 guns, and march 150 kilometers in freezing weather. Any other general would need a week. Patton promised 2 days. He hung up and turned to his staff. "You're about to see what a real army can do." At 1800 that night, the 3rd Army began to move. Through blizzards and darkness, 15,000 vehicles rolled north. Tank tracks screeched on ice. Engines froze solid, but they kept moving. Sergeant Mike O'Connor of the 4th Armored wrote to his wife, "Tanks skid, trucks slide into ditches, but nobody stops. Patton said 48 hours, so 48 hours it will be." By the afternoon of December 20th, the lead elements had reached Ardennes, 150 kilometers in 20 hours. The impossible done. The counterstrike. December 22nd, 0600 a.m. Engines roared across the frozen hills. Patton's 4th Armored Division surged forward. Major General Gaffey deployed his tanks in waves, armor up front, infantry behind, artillery on the flanks. 160 Shermans rolled north into the snow. Their first objective, the village of Martellange. German paratroopers held it with machine guns and mortars. Instead of charging straight in, the Americans encircled the town from 3 sides, blasting through stone houses with M7 howitzers. 2 hours later, the village was free. German losses, 500. American, fewer than 100. SS diaries captured the shock. "We have nothing left," wrote one officer. By nightfall, the 4th Armored had reached the edge of Bastogne. The siege was breaking.
The sky opens. December 23rd. For the first time in a week, the clouds lifted. American air power roared into the skies. P-47 Thunderbolts swept over the snowfields, unleashing rockets and bombs on German columns below. Major Robert S. Johnson remembered, "It was like a shooting gallery, tanks, trucks, all in the open." By sundown, the Germans had lost nearly 90 tanks and 200 vehicles. The Panzer dream was over. Patton's army pressed on, expanding the assault. The 26th Infantry struck toward Wiltz. The 80th advanced on Edelbrucht. Within days, the Ardennes offensive, Hitler's last throw of the dice, was finished. And Sepp Dietrich, who once mocked the American merchants, was retreating under skies filled with U.S. planes. The Battle of the Bulge cost the U.S. Army 89,000 casualties, the bloodiest battle it ever fought. But it broke the back of the German Wehrmacht. Patton's 48-hour miracle turned defeat into victory and sealed the fate of Hitler's Reich.